Hello there, welcome back to another show. This is one of the quickies I'm doing over Christmas. When I've got something to talk about, I'll talk about it. If not, I won't bother with a video. So here is my look at Titane, which is the Big Palm d'Or winner from 2021 at the Cannes Film Festival. It was written and directed by Julia Ducarno. I'm pretty sure I pretty much butchered the surname there, but those are the breaks. Now, I have not seen Raw yet. I've got it, I haven't watched it. But, so I came into this one with a lot of recommendations. It won all these awards. I mean, recommended as in, you should see this. With lots of people who's putting I can trust. And to be honest, I had mixed reactions to the film. There's lots of good stuff. But, there's some stuff I wasn't keen on. I'm trying to avoid spoilers since it's a new film. I'm not going to go into all the details, so it's going to be a fairly quick look at the film. So I'm trying not to go crazy in this one, and what I'm saying, because you really have to see it for yourself. I think it is one of those films that is going to go off in odd directions, but so try not to read up on it. It does accumulate, it does get somewhere. The problem I had with it was in the middle section. Middle section, it started out strong, where's it going to go? Then it got to a middle section, which is setting up the central situation. And for me, that went on too long. This is like an hour and a half film in the body of an hour 45 film. That's my feeling on it. It's like, it needed 15 minutes in that middle section to go, because it was like, you felt like it was making a point again and again and again. It was just that thing of it was just like, it never really, for me, it was like, just get on with it. I've kind of got the idea. And I think because one thing I would say about it is it's a very slight story, ultimately. It's an atmosphere story. It's got a fairy tale element to the story, which needs kind of, because it's not realism at all. There's no realism. The central conceit is unrealistic and improbable, if not impossible, and it gives you a lot of time to where it's hard to suspend your disbelief at times, and that you have to be good into it with a sense of, I'm just going to have to let this pass, even though it's starting to irritate me a little bit. So that's the downside. So you may actually feel that as you're watching the film, that it's teeny Mickey a little bit with what expects you to suspend disbelief. Trust me, it's worth it in the end. It gets somewhere good. But in that middle section for me was the weakest point, because I felt it was dragging, and it was there were a couple of incidents that were signposted so obviously that it was like, too better than this. This is not so good. That's not so good. But generally, the strength of the story itself makes up for it. The ideas make up for it. As a film, though, that I think there's a tendency for some French filmmakers who, because of the kind of nouvelle vague in the 60s, where it was all about Godard and intellectualism and to be the smartest directors around, in the 80s and onwards, a lot of French directors rebelled against that. Rebelled against Chabrol, Rivette, Godard, and became much more like focusing on the visuals only, or visuals above all else, and emotion above all else, above the intellectual meaning behind it. This film has a film for the ideas, but it also has a film for that kind of 80s French cinema that, to me, sometimes focused too much on the visuals and had this kind of weird romanticism that meant sometimes you felt the filmmakers were avoiding the implications of their ideas rather than exploring them. And that's another thing I felt in the middle, really, was that it was like, it had lots of stuff going on, and if you're going to take this long, you have to really explore it, and it was much more interesting to have the visual kind of poetic elements to it rather than exploring the situation. So that's an issue I had. Because I think for this length, it needed to go into details a bit more character-wise. As you can probably tell, I'm avoiding talking about this plot. I mean, because the plot changes every 20 minutes for the first half of the movie. It goes in one direction, goes in another direction. I'm really trying to avoid giving you an idea of the plot. It's got a lot of influence from Cronenberg. You know, there's the two that are the most obvious are Crash and then Butterfly. Those are the two that are obviously an influence from Cronenberg. You know, and which I didn't know them Butterflies, but when before getting into it, so it was quite interesting because I was actually going to watch them Butterfly, and I was like, oh, I guess I should leave that a few days now. So, but yeah, those are the two Cronenberg films I think it takes off of most. And there's a lot of elements about gender and sexuality, and it's not about fluidity of sexuality, it's about nuance of sexuality, nuance of the evolution of sexuality. That's really what it's about. It's what happens when you add emotion to sensuality and what's inherent in your personality and what forces you to do certain things and what's going on. And this film tries to not tell you why anything's happening, which is good and bad. It's good because sometimes films can go over the top with that, but it's bad sometimes you think they're just putting some romanticism into it rather than the way a Cronenberg film can be really disturbing and there's no romanticism and it makes you have to really intellectualise and look at emotionally people. This one you feel that there is a kind of slither of fairy tale element to it, which would have worked better if it had been a bit shorter. It's just that kind of film where I think there's a lot of influences all over the place, and I just needed a kind of tighter edit to get rid of the few scenes. You just feel that you've still got some deleted scenes in here. That's my big thing. You feel like if you look at deleted scenes in any film, sometimes you think, oh, I'm glad I lost that scene. And you see what interesting director, but it would have made the film get a bit flat in the middle. This film has those scenes in. It's a big thing I've got to say about this one. But I would definitely say try and not read up on it. Try and go in as... Try and avoid the trailer, because the trailer makes you think it's a totally different film from what it is. But try and avoid the trailer, try and avoid reading about it. Just try and go in and see it as blank as possible. And even me saying the two Cronenberg films it was influenced by most doesn't really tell you where it's going. Because it goes in a different direction from those films too. But it has influence of those two. And it's one of those really promising films by director. I'm not sure it's at the level of Winning Palm d'Or level. It's kind of like Pulp Fiction in that way, where it's like, this is a good film by a promising director, but it's not a masterpiece. There's a lot of talent here, but there's some self-indulgences that could get out of control if the producers just let them run right, like what happened with Tarantino. It's kind of that kind of film. It's a big new person, director emerging, but where will they go in the future? Who knows? But it is definitely worth seeing. But I would definitely say have patience, because you might need it. It is a film, I think, it is genuinely too long. Pointless review. So go see Titane if you're in the mood for being adventurous, but don't read anything about it. Just try not knowing about it. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope I didn't spoil anything. I've tried my best not to spoil anything. I almost did a few times, but I never. So, there we go. I'll be back at some point. Bye.